up, babies? What's the matter, boy? It's my channel. Happy Tuesday to everybody. I think I'm finally ready to get started. Most importantly, we have our... I'll be able to adjust the camera without making her mad. She's been a little touchy today, but I've got my chief editor with me while we're about to get started writing. My little kitty is with me. There she is. You can kind of see her there. You can see her little head and her little tail peeking up there. Leela is here with me, and she's annoyed at me for screwing around with my equipment. She's giving me a look like, why would you mess with your setup in the middle of the stream? That's incredibly unprofessional and stupid of you. I know, sweet. Good kitty. Very cold around here today, and so she is joining me in order to sap my body heat a little bit and share my heated blanket that I have. You can see it propped up here. It'll be easier. The plaid here behind me. I have set it up so that my heated blanket here, my little electric blanket, that's the intent is to use it as a lap blanket. But in a stroke of genius that I'm quite proud of and would say is maybe one of the smartest things I've ever done, you know, for better or for worse, I've set it up so that way it lines my chair. So my entire chair is a heated chair. You know, you thought the heated butt warmers in your car were brilliant. Well, I brought it to the whole body. My butt is warm, my lower back is warm, my shoulders are warm. Beautiful thing. And when I'm sitting here, there's room enough in my lap that the kitty gets a little bit of the residual heat radiating up when she snuggles up on the lap. So we're here, and we're gonna do some writing. It's gonna be a good day to do some writing with the kitty. Only way it would be better is if it were warm enough that I didn't need the blanket, especially because I'm in the middle. I'm very close to finally being done with this goal, and then I'll finally shut up about it. Like I can't stop talking about it because it's like so it really takes up the entire consciousness. You know, I've got a Muay Thai fight coming up soon. In less than 2 weeks at this point in time. It's very, very close. And all things considered, I'm mostly just very excited about it. I'm very excited to go in there, to, you know, test out all that I've been training, all that I've been working for quite a while now, for, you know, consistently. Again, I've been back at it about a year since, you know, COVID kind of shut everything down, no exceptions around here. And then as things have kind of opened up and we've been able to like slowly in small groups kind of get back to stuff, those groups kind of growing and growing. You know, in my area now we're back to full training at our gym, and I've been back at it for about a year, and I've been working really hard. When I got back at it, and you know, when I got back at it, you know, when I first started training, I was in a rough spot mental health wise. And so part of it for me was deciding on what I really wanted a goal to be for my training. I didn't want to just idly train. You know, I wanted to make it worth something because you know, you never, one of the lessons of COVID is you never know when things are going to get taken away from you. So I wanted a goal, and I decided that this year, 2022, I was going to have at least one fight. And I have at least one fight. If I don't want to have any more, I don't have to, but I got to get one fight in. And so here I am, like a week and a half away from doing it, and I'm just stoked about it. Like, it's going to be intense, it's going to be really difficult, but it's a great feeling that it's going to be done. But the reason that I brought it up, and one of the reasons that it's constantly on my mind is, you know, I have to manage my weight tightly. I have to make weight for a fight. You can't go into a fight not making weight. You know, they have weight classes, that's the point of it. This is a low-key event, you know, it's not, you know, any sort of championships or anything like that, but you still, you know, you're a sportsman, you train hard and you follow the rules, and the rules say I have to be a certain weight. And so for me, that meant cutting out a certain amount of pounds within the past like 5 weeks since I got myself signed up for this event. And let me tell you, in general, managing weight, not a big deal. But when you're already down at like athletic levels of body fat percentage, you know, so for me, I was hovering at around like 12%, trying to cut myself down to a point where I'm more like, you know, 10% body fat. It's it takes some work, and the big thing is just you're cold all the time. And I've been talking about this for ages because I've been losing so much body fat just in general, getting back to the gym and being healthy again. But my God, it's like it's almost 50 degrees outside, and I am still freezing. You know, I've decided that I've made a decision that once this fight is done, once I'm done with this, I have to be at a weight of 155 pounds for this fight. Once this fight is done, we're getting fat again. Not super big, but we're going back up to 165, and we're just hanging out there, and we're enjoying that extra little bit of insulation, because I can't do this. I can't be this lean for the rest of my life living where I live. It'll be the middle of summer, and I'll be wearing the same, faux fur lined sweater that's just disgusting and doesn't really fit me, but it's the warmest thing that I have. I'm wearing this all the time, and it's like disgusting, because it's just like at this point in time, even when I wash it, it's just so worn out and matted. It's disgusting. But I got to do something. But at any rate, all the stuff in my life that no one cares about. Do some actual writing. Let's go ahead and get ourselves over to some writing. Let me flap us on over here. Yay, here we are. So, I was thinking about, today, Tuesdays, when we work on lore for my world. I was thinking about what I wanted to do with the, for today, because there isn't anything immediately pressing based on what we're writing that we haven't really worked on beforehand, right? Like we've already kind of discussed the history of our wizardly friend. We've kind of discussed we'll have to go back to it a little bit and revisit, but it's a long ways off, the history of the Elven city that our players are, using this city as a transitionary phase to get to the Elven city. Right, so we got some stuff coming up that's gonna be good for writing lore, but immediately there wasn't a whole lot, but I got to thinking, and I was kind of thinking about it yesterday while we were working on the city, and I still don't feel like I have a clear understanding in my head as I'm trying to write, what the nature of this city is and used to be, right? Like I've got ideas, a basic vague idea of what it was, right? And we have worked on some stuff, but I still feel like there's a lot that I need to hash out for me to really strongly understand what's going on in this city. So I wanted to revisit. I wanted to check and see what we have, and be ready to make some changes if we need to, make as many changes as we need to, add as many details as we need to. I want to understand this city better so that as I'm writing a destroyed version of it for the campaign itself, I have a stronger sense of why things are the way they are, how to design and drop clues for our players about the history of the city, and just make it feel like a more cohesive and understood thing, because right now I don't have an understanding of it. And for me, as someone who writes his own world, is really into world building, and who is intending to make this be a place that I can just sort of know intimately without having to read a whole lot when I'm running a game, I'm not satisfied with how little I understand about this place. So that's what I want to work on today. I want to just, do some revising of some stuff, some adding of some details if that's where we're at. I just want to work on some of that stuff. I'm sorry, kitty. Head's kind of in the way there, like right on the arm. I kind of need that. She's such a sweetheart, but sometimes she's just very sometimes she's very present. She makes herself very, very present in life, and I mean, what cat doesn't from time to time? But boy, they know how to pick awkward times for that. They always do. Yeah, I'm talking about you. Such a goofy girl. All right. One of these days, I'll put my money where my mouth is and get a little cat cam, little camera that's easy for me to adjust, and we can just point directly at her. So whenever she's out, everyone can just enjoy her presence. Enjoy basking in the glory of her queenly presence. My cat isn't a queen. At most, she's a princess. a little bit more high maintenance, a little bit more high energy. Maybe one day we'll grow into being a regal queen, but she's not nearly composed enough. I know, but you're trying your best, and that's all that matters. God, little kitty. All right. So let's take a look at what we have so far. And start with making any edits that we need to really kind of, like I say, just start to understand the city a little bit better. Like I say, I just don't feel like I have a clear understanding of what's going on with this place. So, the pre-unhinging history, Minadala was once a city that lived at a very leisurely pace. The extent of planning rarely became more detailed than knowing something needed to be done in the afternoon or similar plans. Few people had any sort of clock or watch with them, even fewer minded them at all. The people went about their business, recognizing that the important things would eventually be done in whatever time it took to do them. As such, it was a place that often drew in travelers looking for a break from whatever lives they were exhausted from before. Though not exactly a destination resort type of place, it was a place that often had a collection of foreigners who were always eager to adapt to life as it ran in the city. Yeah, I think that still fits. I think that still fits. It's like a tourist town, right? Like I live in Michigan, United States, and we are known as the Great Lakes state, and a big part of Michigan commerce is tourism, right? And so I think about there's cities not far from me even that have a very touristy feel, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that's what they are, right? These cities, these towns that are close to the lake, right? And so people show up and they want a quintessential summer by the lakeside experience, right? Whether that's the rich hoity-toity version of, you know, being part of the country club in the city, you know, and all of the rich families from around town go and network during the summer vacation, or the more working class version of finding a small cabin and fishing, right? Like there's a specific environment that exists in a touristy town, and I really want this town to have that. And so I think one of the things that'll be good for the sake of fleshing this out and understanding the city is to think about what would be a medieval, you know, a medieval fantasy version of tourism in this type of environment. And then from there, trying to understand what that would mean for this specific city. Like, does that mean there would be, let me pull up our map actually. I feel like maybe understanding our map might help, or looking at our map might help us understand this a little bit too, what we're going for. Let's open up this map. This is the most version of it. Yeah, this is good. Cool. So like this is our map. And we've got our city of Minadala right here, right? And so there's the river. Oh, excuse me. Tickle in the throat, I can feel it. Oh man, there's that one before it turns into a old man hacking fit. Oh, those are always the worst. Always the worst. So yeah, so we've got our city here, right? And it's gonna be a tourism. And so I think the things that would be included in that is recognizing that there's a lot of savanna with a lot of wildlife that people might be interested in seeing. A lot of mountaintop stuff. Oh, we saw some birds. Oh, you can't see her on the camera. She's getting ready to hunt. There she is. She's staring out the window. She's putting her little butt right on my arm, which is kind of gross. But, you know, that's cat ownership for you right there. You just accept that the gross things happen. Pet ownership in general. Honey, go to the window. Just go to the window if you wanna hunt. I'm just gonna put her little beehole right on my arm. Cat. God. This is why my hands are constantly dry and chapped, even in the summer. Because I have an animal, and rather than trying to avoid gross things happening with an animal, I find it's just easiest to let them happen and just make sure I wash my hands a lot. You're gross, honey. Let me just move the keyboard a little bit and we slide the arm out the way. There, now you can actually sit down, you goofball. Alright. Anyway, I feel like this city would have a lot of like sort of tourism stuff involved with visiting the mountains, doing something with this river, and then doing something with the plains out here, right? There would be like excursions. And then the other thing that was really important about this being like a touristy city is that because of its wide variety of locations, it gets a whole lot of different cultural mainstays, right? Like there's a certain degree of elven culture that comes from right, proper tab, that comes from our elven cities up here when they travel in, right? Because there used to be the network of teleportation circles associated with this city. There's that. There's dwarves, there's dwarven cultures from the mountains that bleed into it. There's the natural, just sort of human culture that's pervasive in everything because that's the most relatable, so we always utilize it. Because there's really important historical reasons within this world that make it so that there's humans everywhere. Not because I'm just trying to make it relatable to humans. And I don't even know why I'm pretending like that isn't the exact reason why we do it. Because like that's why every alien in Star Wars that is even remotely a main character is a human in a mask, right? Same with Star Trek. It's human in a rubber mask. That's always what they are, because if it's too weird and bizarre, we can't relate to it. I mean, look at every sci-fi thing in the world. Look at Mass Effect, right? There's plenty of not human in a mask aliens that exist, but the further from human in a mask you get, the less primary that character is, right? It's like the robot, the bipedal robot, the robotman, like they're main characters. The Asari, main characters. Bipedal, yeah, humans with like weird tentacle hair instead of normal hair, main characters, right? The Koreans, right? The humans but in a suit, they're main characters. Koreans, humans with some spikes on their faces, main character. You get to like the Volus, a little too squat to really be believable as human, not really main characters. Hanar, floating jellyfish, not main characters, not at all. That's just how it is. I don't know. End of speech, I guess. rant over. But yeah, I don't know. At any rate, human culture would be in there, and then there would also, the other big one within this region is, as I've discussed, out in these plains. These plains are definitely the territory of like the Leonin cultures, and there's a lot of bleed in from there when the Leonins need access to like a city, need access to more resources than what they necessarily have out in the middle of, nothing. So, I know, Kitty, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to disturb you, I need a drink. She's still in the exact same space. Yep, she's still exactly there. Exactly in the same exact space. He's a good kid. He's a good kitty, and I'm a little obsessed. Your tail's in the way. She doesn't care. She doesn't care, I guarantee you. I'm not just trying to give her a bad rap to you guys. She just does not care. So anyway, there's a lot of different cultural things, which is a big part of it. So it's like, when I'm thinking about, so what, like, and that's the type of stuff that I need to think about, because I haven't really been thinking about that as we're creating, this stuff with our dungeon maps when they're going through. Like, we've got the marketplace, but I haven't been thinking about the fact that it's a marketplace that's going to be more touristy. And I don't think we need to undo anything we've done. I think what we've done so far is fine, because we've only done like 3 rooms. So we don't need to undo it. There would be a general shop. There would be, an alchemy type of shop. There would be plenty of stuff like that. There's no problems with that. But for the remaining shops, it would be nice if I could like kind of twist them to having a flavor of being, touristy in some way, shape, or form. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be touristy. It just has to be stuff that people, particularly rich people, would be willing to travel from all over the world to see and experience, right? So let's see. So continuing with just looking over what we have. Yeah, I think this first one is good. It's not exactly a destination resort type of place. It was a place. The city itself serves as a melting pot for the surrounding areas. Dwarves from the mountains, elves from the Siski Forest, Leonins and humans from the Golden Plains, a handful of others. Sorry, one second. Un segundo. I'm probably butchering that and being horribly culturally insensitive. I apologize. Leonins and humans from the Golden Plains and a handful of other populations made up the steady demographics of the city back when it was alive. As a result, the city has a unique and charming mix of cultural districts. Truly, it was an exciting and diverse place to be in its heyday. So that's something that I think I want to change. Not necessarily because I don't think it would be true about this city, but because the way we've structured our player travels, they're not going to get a feel for that. So setting up the different cultures as districts rather than an intermingling, I think disrupts and kind of waters down the atmosphere of a diverse city that I'm trying to get going here. So I think I need to edit this a little bit. So rather than districts, we're just going to say a mix of cultural, I'm going to say cultural goods and services. And we're just going to leave it like that. I think we'll just leave it like that and abandon the idea of there being districts. So that way when we're going about, let me actually pull up our map because we can actually maybe just put like a few notes and make a few changes based on some of the stuff that we've done. So particularly I want this one. We have a few different maps, but this one's the one that's particularly important based on the conversation we're having right now. Right, this is our marketplace here. And so looking at all of this, I think what would be more fun and more interesting, so we've kind of just made generic shops, right? We have a jewelry shop, we have a general goods, and we have like an alchemy shop. And we can leave those. I don't know that there's a strong need to change those. I think those, as they are, can serve just fine. But I think filling in the rest of them, it'll be more fun to have things that are, you know, this one is a particular, like this one's a particular one that's like dwarven blacksmithing, right? Because it's kind of a bigger one, you know, and it's like this one, you know, was elven, you know, plant goods, like elven teas or something like that. You just make things that are more, like more niche but interesting. You know what I mean? Like, you know how that is when you go to a touristy town and like the marketplace will have very specific types of shops that are kind of unique to the area. You know, living in Michigan, I always think about the insistence that Mackinac Island is the home, the birthplace of fudge, which is like ridiculous, but that's just part of the culture, right? You go there and there's like 8 million fudge shops, and all of them have their own little cult following of people who insist that fudge shop is the best fudge shop. Which, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and I'm 100% on board with that battle because I will die on this hill. Okay, this is an important one to me, so I'm just going to clear the air. I'm going to say it to everyone. If you ever go to Mackinac Island in Michigan, okay, there's a place called Murdoch's, and I will absolutely pick a fight with Murdoch's on this one. They make great fudge, don't get me wrong. But their fame is more marketing than anything else. They make great fudge. But the best fudge comes from the Murray Hotel, okay? And the reason is because, again, I get fiery about this because this is an important one to me, because fudge, if you're going to do it right, okay? You go to the Murray Hotel, they use a kettle. They use a kettle to stir and mix the fudge, whereas Murdoch's and a lot of other places use the, like, what's considered to be the more traditional method of spreading on a table and folding the fudge, right? When you fold the fudge, it's harder to keep the heat in there while you're mixing it, which means it's harder to get fully equal distribution of all the stuff and fully equal melting of all of the components, right? And the result is you have grainier fudge. But when you do it in the kettle, that's when you get that really smooth, really rich, really creamy fudge. And I will die on the hill that is the way it should be. Fight me. I am so amped up. I've got a fight in 2 weeks. Everyone fight me about that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm half kidding. I'm half kidding, okay? I'm not kidding about the truthiness of that. That's what makes Murray Hotel fudge different than a lot of the other places, because a lot of the other places will do the traditional, the traditional method. I don't know enough about it to know which one is actually the traditional method and which one's supposed to be the correct one. All I know is that just because they call it traditional doesn't mean it's better. And I will absolutely, anyone who wants good fudge, I will recommend every single time. Don't go to the places that, advertise really well. Go to the places, just do your research. Doesn't even have to be the Murray Hotel. Go to the places that use kettle. They use kettle stirring to make their fudge, because that is how you will get the rich, creamy fudge that is just absolutely melt in your mouth, delectable. Because all the other stuff, it ends up a bit grainier, it's a bit chalkier in consistency, and that's when you get the stuff that's like more like biting into a soft chocolate bar as opposed to just like sinking your teeth into like thick, rich fudge. So that's my hill I'm gonna die on. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Point is, the reason this is relevant and important, and the reason why I'm talking about it is, you go to a tourist city, and like there's these niche shops that like are in some way, shape, or form ubiquitous with that city. It doesn't even matter if it's necessarily true that you can only find this thing in this city, right? As long as they market it that way, they can do that. And so this city, I want it to have shops like that, where it's like, not necessarily that, like, because this is such a like melting pot of a city, it's not necessarily that it's going to be like, oh, Minadala is the home of this, that, or the other thing, but more so that it's like, you can go to Minadala and there's a bunch of specialty shops. Like there would be one shop that's like, maybe we just say like there is a human fudge shop, and it's like, oh yeah, if you want quintessential human fudge in this city, you got to go to this shop, or it's like, yeah, if you're looking for some solid dwarven armaments or whatever, then go to this one blacksmith in town. Like I want this town to have those types of things. So I might even like rebuild some of these buildings so that way they all can have like unique construction and just look different, right? Like if there's going to be a dwarven blacksmither, maybe we go ahead and make it just out of stone or something. As long as it doesn't damage what we're trying to accomplish with it. I actually think that would be really fun to kind of mix it up a little bit that way. So at any rate, like, see, this is why it's good to go back and review, because I already have a stronger idea of what I want this place to be than I did beforehand. It's going to be good. So post-unhinging. When the unhinging occurred, due to the relaxed and unconcerned attitudes of the people, Minadala was woefully unprepared for the unhinging. That just is a clumsy sentence. Big step. Or the catastrophe. Catastrophe. Yeah. It just sounds weird to say, when the unhinging happened, they were unprepared for the unhinging. Like, it just sounds awkward, but I don't want to say they were unprepared for it, because that just sounds simplistic. So we'll just say the catastrophe. That's a good use of a buzzword for the day. That's your word for the day, catastrophe. Though the effects of the event were not as rapid here as other places in Zaoria, the increase in attacks from wild animals of monstrous proportions, something that the people simply couldn't cope with. More and more incidents occurred every day, and soon it was clear to the people that they could no longer stay here. The then mayor, I think I'm supposed to have a little dash there if I'm going to phrase it that way. The then mayor of the city, with the help of a powerful local wizard, contacted the leaders in Fosvik and ensured welcome for the people if they collectively fled north. So that's what they did, leaving their ways of life behind and taking only what few warm clothes they had as they accepted a new life away from home. In the days since, the city has largely been left untouched. The occasional beast will find its way into the city from time to time, but most do not stay more than a night or two, as needed for shelter, as there is little of value to a beast in need of food and water. As such, the city serves as a strange sort of time capsule, in which life from a few thousand years ago remains framed in the ancient buildings that have managed to stay standing. Only one consistent resident remains, but he lives a life of seclusion up in the tower just outside of town, largely unaware of how time is impacting the world around him. Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. And actually that kind of, reviewing that now gives me a little more insight into how I can approach decorating, designing some of these rooms for our campaign right? Because now that I'm remembering, like, people did just kind of pack up with the assumption that, like, okay, give it a couple weeks for this all to blow over. Go to the Winchester, have a pint, and wait for all of this to blow over, right? Like, a lot of them left their livelihoods behind. Like, they left their shop stuff just kind of closed up and good to go. Like, all of their goods are still largely in place. So as I'm designing these things, I can have things be a little less, like, in general disarray, I think. And so that's a good thing to remember. That's a good bit of information to remember. Yeah. Demographics. Primarily, the city was comprised of humans due to their large presence throughout the surrounding regions. There were many reasons for people to choose to live in Minadala. But whatever the reason, humans were drawn to the city the most. Second most populous would have been the Leonin people, though in significantly fewer numbers than the humans. Following the Leonins in number would have been the dwarves and elves, who though in very few numbers, that's what it's saying, would have migrated from the mountains and the forests, and the mountains and forests. That just sounds weird to say it to the north, because that's like saying they migrated in a northward direction, but that's not really what we're saying. From the mountains and forests north of the city. That just is a bit more clear and way to phrase it, and that's always a good thing when you're writing. Clear and concise. Leadership. The city of Minadala was led by a council of elders, one from each the humans, Leonin, dwarves, and elves, in addition to one other member chosen by the 4 other members to serve as a tie-breaking vote. Largely, the system worked and was enjoyed by the people of the city. Occasionally, there were issues with the system due to corruption and or inaction by the council, but through history, the system worked as a way to ensure that the interests of all the represented races were heard and met with appropriate compromise. I'm not someone who is skilled at inventing functional political systems, so I 100% acknowledge that that's probably a terrible political system. I feel like it's one that works if everyone involved remains honest and idealistic about things. But it could, like any government system, be easily abused at some point in history. But we're not gonna overthink that because the city doesn't exist anymore. The council's gone. So map details. So here's the part where I feel like we need to make some changes here. Yeah, okay, so what I'm gonna do, I think I want to just scrap all of that and start something different. But rather than delete it all immediately and then be sad if I decide I do want to go back to it, we're just going to copy and reinsert this part and do a second try here, and we will then add and then we'll delete this later if we need to. Otherwise, it's still there for us. We can go back to it if we need it. So map details. Let's see here. So I do want to do districts, but I think it's going to be more so the standard districts. We're going to do like trade district, tourist district, the housing districts, wealthy districts, working districts, like areas like that is kind of how I want to break it up, because that's just going to make more sense and make it a bit easier for us to make the maps as they are for our players. Excuse me. The maps as they are for our players, more sensible and in line with what we're making, right? Like, I want them to be cohesive. I don't want to describe this, go through all this effort of describing a city that isn't going to translate to what we're giving to players. So I want to do, so let's start with the trades district. Go ahead and do that. We'll say, it's just a standard trades district. There's not a whole lot to really worry about. Not a whole lot of detail that needs to be given. I guess we can kind of clarify a few things. Places where people wanting That's it. Let's try doing this. Shops where people would commission specific goods or services tended to aggregate here. Hey Fishy, how's it going? Tended to aggregate here. And say places such as dwarven blacksmiths. Heck yeah, map making is awesome. Map making is awesome. It's one of my favorite parts of world writing, no doubt about that. Places such as dwarven blacksmiths, and I don't know. We'll say elven seamstresses. We'll just say elven tailors. That's easier than specifying. Less gender specific too. You know, I don't know. Tailoresses. I don't know. It gets confusing. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. Dwarven blacksmiths and places such as dwarven blacksmiths and elven tailors, were the dominant places here. Many were of a high class nature, but all would have been welcome as long as they had money to spend. We'll say this district was typically utilized most by, I don't know, residents of the city needing standard items to live by, or wealthy tourists looking to commission exotic items that couldn't be found where they made their homes elsewhere in the world. Right, so it's kind of like, it's the trade goods, and so for the most part, it's like the people who need stuff. So it's like, yeah, there would be dwarven blacksmiths and all that kind of stuff, but for the most part, they would actually make their living just by, like, providing for the city guard and stuff like that. Is how most of them would make their livings. Like there would be, those that, like, elven tailors who are particularly good at making, finely crafted cloth armors and stuff like that, or using plant materials and stuff like that. But largely they would just, like, serve those who were in need of a specific clothing item for an event or something like that. And then their tourism business would be more so about, like, if a particularly wealthy, general was in town and he couldn't find good dwarven made armor where he came from, he would use this as an opportunity to get something custom made, right? Things like that. So the trades district isn't explicitly the heaviest tourist district. But the next district we're going to make, I'm just going to go ahead and call it the tourist district. And we'll say this is the part of town where tourism truly thrived. We'll say specific, actually not specific, specialty shops of all sorts made up multiple main street, in quotes, multiple main street parts of this district. Shops of all sorts made up multiple main street parts of this district, each offering something too specific to survive anywhere else in the world where there weren't people with excess money looking to buy souvenirs. Souvenirs? Is that how you spell souvenirs? Souvenirs? I don't know how to spell souvenirs. Souvenirs. Let's just see it. If auto correct. Or yeah, souvenirs. Oh, I'm adding an extra e in there. All right, I was close. I was close. I'll take it. Looking to buy souvenirs. Things like elven tea shops, Leonin, embroidery, galleries, and dwarven stone cutters found great success in these in this place, in this part of town, serving those who wish to find I'm kind of being redundant there. Wish to find something exotic to take home. Boom, there we go. Sounds like the place for adventures. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's the ghost city that we're working on, so they can't nowadays. But back in the day when it was alive, 100%. 100%. It would be a really good place. Like there would absolutely be pawn shops around. Absolutely there would be. But yeah, so we can say stuff like that. Just another thing too. Often, let's not often, because like a shop would just like exist. So it's not like oftentimes there'd be a shop. It's like, no, it's just there. This district also housed many businesses that offered excursions to the surrounding areas for those looking for a more adventurous trip to the city. Climbing trips into the mountains to the north, guided fishing trips to the nearby river, and safaris to see guided fishing trips to the nearby river and safaris to see wildlife in the savannah. Savannah, there we go. Were all of great popularity. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Fishy. This, it's medieval times. They weren't as enlightened back then, okay? That's just how life was. I'm sorry. Okay, gosh dang it. I really wish it would. I really wish they hadn't. They changed the hotkeys in OneNote. It used to be in OneNote. It used to be like Word, where you double. Oh, now it's gonna do it. Now it's gonna make me look like a fool. Sometimes it does it, and sometimes it doesn't. It used to always consistently, you double enter and it moves the bullet over. But they changed it, and there's situations in which rather than doubling over, it'll just add an empty bullet and move you down another one at the same level, and it just defeats the purpose. Defeats the purpose and drives me insane. Drives me insane when it does that. But yeah, I think that's like the main part of it. Actually, I do want to do this one. And we'll say this was easily the most lively part of town, given the consistently warm and sunny climate all year long. Tourism to the city never truly slowed down at any time, meaning that this district was always thriving, and any who managed to find space to open a shop was likely, say, anyone who managed to find space to open a shop was likely to find great success. We'll just say find success. Save me from my excuse me, save me from myself, because as soon as I see great success, I will immediately turn into Borat. Great success. Every time. Every time. It's unavoidable. See, there I did it. There I did it that time. I don't know why it does it sometimes and sometimes it doesn't. These are the things that I notice that probably no one else in the world notices or cares about, but my golly, it bothers me. It bothers me that it doesn't always do that. If you make a hotkey, it's got to be the same thing every time. Otherwise, how can I trust it and I'll never use it? Golly. Okay, so we've got that. So basically the other important districts to do, we got the trades, tourist, really the only other ones are going to be like the wealthy district and then the slums. Like, those are going to be the only other two like notable parts of the city, and I don't even know that we need to bother discussing the slums, because there's not a reason for our players to go to that part of the town. So we'll say wealthy neighborhoods. As one might expect from a tourist town, a sizable contingency of wealthy people maintained homes of very high quality and stature. For some, these were primary residences, and for others they were second, well, we'll just say vacation homes. Either way, many neighborhoods with large, lavish mansions. No problemo. Glad to have you here at all. Totally understand. Let's see here. Either way, many neighborhoods with large, lavish mansions existed in this city. For the permanent, this is relevant to the campaign that we're working on, to say this next part. So there's a reason I'm bringing it up. The reason I'm bringing it up is relevant to our campaign because our players are going to go to one of these at some point in time. For the permanent residents, often times these homes were large enough to house entire extended families who would enjoy the lives. Let me clarify this a bit. Let me change that a little bit. Sometimes these homes, for the permanent residents, sometimes these homes were prized abodes handed down through generations as highly coveted plots of land. As such, many of these mansions included family burial grounds where the ancestors who first took up residency and all of their lineage would be laid to rest. Boom. Very old school type of approach to things, right? But like that would happen, and that's relevant because there's at some point in time where our players are going to have to go basically be grave robbers if they want to get all of the stuff they'll need for our wizard to be able to make the teleportation circle they're looking for. So I think that works just fine. With the trades, tourist, let me think about all the places our players are going to go to. There's the markets they'll go to a couple times. There's the mansion they'll go to once. Oh, yeah, and there was the temple. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I feel like we could also say, we could call, I think it would be kind of fun to think about it this way. Well, no, I guess it's not a district. And we'll say, let's just say non-district specific locations, right? So, like, that would be kind of a relevant thing. Like, there'd be some places that would be dotted around, right? So we can say standard food and general goods markets were always present throughout the city. Excuse me, the city. After all, even permanent residents have basic needs that need to be met, right? So, like, obviously those would be there. Religious temples and churches of all sorts of worship could be found dotted throughout the city. With such a wide range of cultures, both permanent, permanent. I don't know how to spell permanent. That's embarrassing. Because I have permanent, like Parmesan. That's why. Okay, I had every other part of it right. I just typoed that first part and I didn't see it. Which just, but I mean, that just means that I'm still incapable of spelling the word. Just, in ways that I didn't notice at first. I'm not a professional writer. Don't ask me to be your editor, okay? I am not good at that job. I promise you I am not good at being an editor. It's just not my bag. But yeah, so with such a wide range of cultures, both permanent and transient, nearly any creed or deity there it is. Nearly any creed or deity could be found in representation somewhere in the city. Oftentimes multiple sites to worship the same god or gods could be found. Yeah, so it's like, because they are going to visit one of those, but that's like the thing, there would be a whole lot of different stuff going on because of all of the different cultures represented within that area. There'd be some Leonin ones, there'd be some Leonin stuff, there'd be some dwarven stuff, some elven stuff, some human stuff, all that kind of stuff. All of them, all them gods or whatever, they would all just kind of show up there. They'd all be there. They'd all be represented. And I think what's fun about this one is, like, I'm thinking about, for our players, right, for the part of their campaign where they have to go to a church to get a holy symbol of some sort. I actually really like the idea of kind of writing the temple that they go to visit, writing it in, like, either vague enough terms that it can fit whatever, or offering up a few different examples, like writing up some basic examples where you can just, like, interchange the god or goddess, right? And, like, give players the opportunity to choose a church, right? And you can just, like, mention, like, oh, you'll need a holy symbol, and then let them do an investigation check on the map and find one. And whatever they find and think is interesting, it's like, oh yeah, we'll go to that one. And the temple that we created can just be towards that deity, regardless of what I had originally, planned. I think that would be really fun. I like that. Okay, so I like this better. I do definitely like this better than setting it up by, like, human and Leonin districts. I think it would make perfect sense to let it be either option. I think you can make an argument for either option being sensical. But setting it up that way, I think, makes it just makes it more cohesive with the way we're designing the dungeon, right? And it makes it a bit easier for us to sort of just it makes it easier. Oh, excuse me. To make sure that what we're presenting our players is what we have going on in our head canon, right? Since I decided to take it the route of doing, okay, well, they need components that are more about monetary value than they are about cultural value. It wouldn't make sense to try and structure this next part of the actual campaign as okay, you need to go to the Leonin district and here's a whole bunch of Leonin based things, right? Or what have you. I think it makes more sense to set up the districts this way, since it's like, okay, you need to go find this type of thing that could be found in a market, and then you need to go find this type of thing which is most likely found in some rich hoity-toity person's home, all that kind of stuff. So I think this setup is better. I think it's going to serve our needs a lot better for our campaign, and I feel good about it. Also, because of those few edits we made, it's a lot more cohesive with what we're doing. Welcome back, Fishy. So yeah, I think that's good what we have there. I feel like I'm not done designing this city though. I feel like I need something more. Like, I've gone through and done largely what my templates sort of dictate, but I think it needs an extra one. I think it needs something a little extra. And I know exactly. I think I know exactly what I want. I think I know exactly what that extra thing is that I want to do. But we're gonna get started on it in just 1 minute, because I need to run to the bathroom and refill my beverage. And I'm not taking you guys with me. There's too many cords involved. That's the reason why. No, I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick, grab myself some more drink, and then I will be right back. And then we will continue to figure out what this city needs. So sit tight. Okay, I'm back. Much improved. Empty bladder is a happy bladder. That's true for everyone. Okay, so the section that I want to do here, what I want to do is I just kind of want to make a timeline of sorts of exactly how the city changed over time, right? So, because like I say, this is a ghost city, um, but it wasn't always a city like that. And because our players are going to be interacting with this when it's, been centuries, millennia since the last time it was inhabited, there's certainly going to be a decline, but also because there's a wizard who has basically made himself immortal trying to protect and maintain this city, um, things have changed about it, and I want to kind of create a timeline about how everything transpired in the city to make it a bit easier to know what sorts of clues and everything we can give to our players. Um, so that's kind of what I want to do. I want to just do timeline of, well, we'll just say timeline. We'll just call it the timeline. That's fine. Right, what happened to the city? So this city is part of my homebrew world, which is a post-apocalyptic world within, high magical fantasy stuff. The gist of it is that there was an event called the Unhinging, where all of the different realms, mortal, ethereal, elemental, all of those different planes, if you think about them as being, a jar of like water and sand and rocks and oil and all these different things that, like, if you just kind of let them sit, eventually it'll percolate into different layers, right? If you consider all the different planes of existence to be like that, the unhinging is as though someone took that jar and shook it up and mixed everything up. And it caused a lot of chaos and pandemonium throughout the world. All kinds of, creatures were displaced and shoved into places they didn't belong. And so the result was an incredibly dangerous world with a whole lot of dangerous creatures and like magical radiation existing in the world due to just like rips and tears between the planes. And the result was that most of the world became very uninhabitable because of just the dangers involved with staying in any sort of place. So throughout the world, basically what happened is there were about 12 cities that were big enough and fortified enough to survive this event. The rest of the world just kind of degraded rapidly. And so the world kind of became one where there's like 12 fortified cities, and the rest of the world is just called the Wilds. And the Wilds includes just countless number of ghost cities like this one. So that's basically what happened to the city. And so what happened with this one is that the people, given their location and just the nature of how things, shook out there weren't any like horrible monstrosities, but rather what happened is the magical radiation just kind of made all of the normal creatures that live in sort of this savanna area really super big and scary and dangerous. So the people didn't immediately really realize the magnitude of what happened until eventually they started having all kinds of attacks and stuff from just like big super giant versions of the different creatures that could be found around there. Big lions the size of a house showing up, hyenas the size of a truck walking about, things like that. And so eventually it got to be too much, and the people sort of understood, and they made a pilgrimage to a city to the north that was much more fortified and had space for them and welcomed them in. So they kind of went there. And then what was left behind was this one wizard who was a pretty powerful wizard and wanted to try and protect the city so that they had a home to return to once everything blew over. No one realized at that time, that was like a week or two after it happened, no one realized that this would be a thing that would last, for millennia, because there was no immediate way to quickly fix or just wait out the natural stitching of countless rips in reality that showed up between different planes. Like you'd one second be walking through the mortal plane, the next thing you know you're in the fire plane, and like no idea what the heck happened because there was just all these rips in reality. And the world just never really recovered. But the wizard sort of taking advantage of a lot of this magical radiation, sort of invented some different ways to keep himself alive so that he could continue to try and protect the city. So in many ways, the city has deteriorated and fallen apart due to everything because there's only so much one man, even a powerful wizard, can do. But there's this weird amalgamation of parts of the city that have fallen apart and other parts that have been protected and saved. And it kind of creates this weird situation where, you know, one street you'll be walking on still seems quite pristine and intact, and others have just completely fallen apart. And so that's basically what happened to it. It's basically what happened to everywhere in this world of mine. Not a super bright, happy place. But it serves the aesthetic that I really like to make for my games, which is some sort of amalgamation of, like, some sort of mix of, you know, the Dark Souls world where everywhere you go, there's just things are just like off kilter and weird, right? Things that are just, you know, not quite right. Along with like a certain degree of, you know, Shadow of the Colossus, where a lot of the world is just very lonely, right? Because there's nobody living in it. It's just a very lonely, abandoned place. And it makes it really fun because it gives an excuse for players to sort of explore all kinds of abandoned ancient ruins, right? That they can explore and find long gone cultures. Because I'm a huge fan of like the ancient forgotten culture concept of places. You know, and it gives them an excuse to do that. And like the best part about it is it helps remove concerns about player knowledge, like meta knowledge versus character knowledge, because their characters would have no more context really for what's going on in this, that, or the other abandoned city than the players. So it's like the players are learning along with their characters, and it makes it a really fun place to explore for people, because it's like, you know, you don't just like roll a dice and there's like random stuff that, like, you know, it's not like, oh, would my character know about this? It's like the answer's no, because no one's lived here for like 2,000 years, you know. So it's like the answer's no. Your character would have no idea, and so it makes it a bit easier for players to not have to worry about, you know, am I metagaming and do I know too much? Does my player know more than I do? It's like, no, none of you or your character have no idea what's going on here, and so you get to explore the clues, and it makes it easier for players to use their knowledge as the character knowledge. Which can be a hard thing to separate, especially if you're playing a character that isn't supposed to be exceptionally smart. But it's like if neither of you knows anything, then as you figure things out, that's like as your character figures them out, and that's great. So yeah, thank you. I like it. I'm a big fan of it. I've been slowly adding bits and pieces to this world for, I mean, honestly, I've had this general world as a place for close to a decade. I've done world building as a hobby for much more than that of my life. But I started kind of bringing it all and making it into a single cohesive world, you know, sometime in like college or grad school, which was, depending on which year of all that we're talking about, anywhere between, you know, 5 and 10 years ago. So better part of a decade I've been working on it, and it's my baby. It's my baby. I like my little world. I like my little world. It's my little fantasy retreat from the real world, which is kind of funny because this world is like not a happy place to retreat to, but you know. Oh, yours much more recent. Yeah, I had thought about having it be a recent thing, but like I say, I really like the concept of finding, like, stumbling across this, like, an entire city that no one knew existed, right? Like, I love that that sort of atmosphere of like, whoa, there's an entire culture that existed here that no one knows about. And so having the Cataclysm be so far back in the history really serves that, and it really makes it fun for players to kind of go through. So, Kuramori, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Hello there. Evening to you. It's like afternoon here. Kuro's fine. Perfect. That's much easier. I appreciate you. How's it going? Let's get rolling. Good to see you. Good to see you back here. Yeah, I always do my best to pronounce people's names because I feel so bad if I do it wrong. Because it's like people pick these names and there's a good chance that it has a whole lot of meaning, and then here I am just like phonetically butchering them. I just feel so horrible. So glad to hear it. Glad to hear you're doing good. So, but yeah, that's kind of the gist of my world here. And so I kind of want to, for this city, because our players are going to be spending some time, uh, it's, self-awareness is a good thing, right? Self-awareness is a good thing. I appreciate it. I appreciate where you're coming from. But yeah, so with this city, because our players are going to spend a lot of time with it, even though like we're going to end up writing a whole lot more detail than they're likely to find, because I don't shove the lore of my world down my players' throats. It's more so that it's there if they discover it and are interested in it, because that just I find it really helps fill out an experience for players. So I want to do just like a bit of a timeline about like where it was right when the unhinging happened, and then how it declined over those thousands of years when it was like only basically being maintained by a single wizard. So this city, so I have I'll try and give the cliff notes of it. I'll catch you up since we got a few people joining. We'll give the cliff notes here. So there's a long form campaign that I'm writing, that takes place in this little part of my world. I wish there was a natural zoom in between those. But it is what it is. 33. Hold on. We can do it. Whatever. I'll stop obsessing. So this is the part of my world. I have an entire world. You know what? I haven't shown my world on stream in quite some time. So y'all are lucky. You get to see me. Screw it. We're gonna spaz out and I'm gonna show you my world. I'm gonna go ahead and show it off. This is my world. This is the world of Zaoria. It's a fantasy world that started off with me in high school, just like being fascinated with the concept of world building. Ever since I watched my sister play the game Myst. The game Myst was such a cool idea for me as a kid. The idea that a real existing world could exist within writing was just absolutely fascinating to me. So I got into world building without understanding that that's what I was into. Like in I don't know, it was probably around high school is when I really started getting into it. And I would just write these little bits where I would just like describe a city or describe a forest or something like that. And then eventually that turned into writing more cohesive places. And then eventually that turned into when I got invited to my first D&D game, that turned into me realizing like, oh, I could use this world building as a way and combine it with D&D as a way to enjoy my worlds as a more active living space, like in Myst, right? I was like, oh, here's something fun to do. And then that eventually turned into taking all these little bits and pieces that I was writing and turning it into one big cohesive world, which has then turned into this world that you see before you. So this is my world. And we were writing a campaign that takes place within this little hex. It's one campaign that's just like right in there. Thank you, Fishy. I appreciate it. It's gone through many iterations, and this is probably the prettiest iteration. The first iteration was hand drawn and it looked like garbage. I'm horrible at drawing. But it's turned into a nice little place. But one of the important things about this world is it is a post-apocalyptic world. In the present time, it's about 2,000 years after an event that was called the Unhinging. And what the Unhinging was is the way I described it not long ago is imagine that all of the planes of existence, right? Your ethereal, your elemental, your mortal, whatever. All of those planes exist within like a jar that's, imagine you have a jar of pond water, right? Where you've got different layers of stone and sand and water and oils and plant life and all that kind of stuff. And if you just let it sit there, it kind of percolates and forms those layers. Those layers are the different planes of existence. The Unhinging is like someone took that jar and shook it all up, and everything got all mixed up, and it caused all kinds of pandemonium. Tears and rips in reality occurred. Suddenly people were walking down the street and they thought they were just having a hunky-dory day in their mortal realm, and the next thing you know, they're in the middle drowning in the water plane. Just all kinds of horrible stuff happened. Monsters from any given plane were suddenly planted into the middle of like someone's living room, right? Just all kinds of crazy, horrible stuff happened. And as a result, people, like most of the world was just kind of left in ruin. And with a handful of cities, there's about 12 cities dotted around. You can kind of see them here, that were big enough, strong enough, and lucky enough to not be at the epicenter of any of these tears, that they became sort of strongholds for, sentient life. And that's basically where our world is. Most of the world has been left to the wilds, left to the monsters, while these handful of cities remain these sort of strongholds that people live in. Things have started to calm down from that a little bit. Some natural healing and stitching of a lot of those tears has started to happen a couple thousand years later, but most of this area remains completely untouched and uninhabited as far as the people in these cities know. The only really communication they have is this sort of one main highway that all of the cities sort of collectively keep protected for the sake of basic trade and all that kind of stuff. So that's the nature of the world. So thank you, Kuro. I appreciate that. Expanding upwards and downwards, no. This is the entirety of the world. These are the polar caps of the world. The only expanded area is really on either side of this. This entire world is just one singular continent like this. It's a very Pangea type of world, right, where everything is just one single continent. The ocean is a lot bigger than what it kind of appears in here, though. And most of this ocean is like lost, and people don't traverse the ocean because anyone who tries usually disappears. And I kind of leave that as a basic unknown. It sort of serves as a Forgotten Realms type of thing for my world, where it's like if I have need for an isolated, like suppose I need I've got players that want a Jurassic Park style thing, and they want all kinds of dinos running around. There's not really a place in this world as I have it written where dinosaurs belong, but if players want it, like, yeah, screw it. We'll just go ahead and say there's an island that's completely untouched by everything else where dinosaurs are there, and there's like a small tribe of people that were like alive when the dinosaurs showed up and they've managed to survive on that island, right? Things like that. So it expands a little bit that way, but for the most part, this is it. This is everything that's there. Yes, I do use D&D 5e as a system, but the way I write things, it's not like the way I write things is that it would be very easy to transpose really any sort of fantasy rule set onto this. The way I write my campaigns is much more scene setting, and then I just add minimal details. I copy and paste stat blocks and put them in there based on what monsters are there, but it's I take a much more thematic approach to building my world. And so the idea is like, okay, let me pull up the dungeon form of this city that we're working on, which is what that's not the one. This is the one, which is sort of the gameplay version that we give to our players, right, room by room. So we have like some of the wild animals that are now roaming this abandoned city. They're all skinned to be rhinos because when they first arrive at the city, there's just a herd of rhinos that are just kind of grazing throughout the city. That it's like, yeah, you want to find stuff in the city? Have fun avoiding the big muscle unicorns, so it's like we do that. And so I put in these stats and everything, but the idea, oops, I didn't want to do it that way. That was a silly way for me to handle it. Oh boy, now I've done it. Now it's not gonna let me scroll over. Shit, no. There we go. That'll get us there. So it's I take a very thematic approach to building my stuff. So if we were playing a Pathfinder game, all you would have to do is find a monster that statistically is about the same, and can serve as a rhino, and you use that instead, right? And it's like for the DC checks, for skill checks and all that kind of stuff, you just edit them a little bit, right? So this one's supposed to be a DC 14. You just edit that so it makes more sense with the way Pathfinder works. But the setting itself, largely speaking, it's a high fantasy thing. So that's my goal always, and that comes from the fact that I just, I do have this sort of approach, this mentality of doing things from a world building perspective as opposed to a D&D perspective. Like I was into world building a lot earlier than I was into D&D. I started off from that point, and so for me, it's like I don't do world building to service my D&D hobby. It's for me almost more that I do my D&D hobby to service my world building. It gives me an outlet to share and to like share the stuff that I write and watch the stuff that I write sort of come to life, right? Because I create a location that has a rich history, a meaning, a purpose, a reason it exists in my world. And then I just like, I write it, I make it clear, and then I basically just say, I include stuff for players to do and basically just say, this is your location, what do you do? And let them go around there. Like, they have a mission, right? But the mission for this, to sort of maybe try and explain it in another way, the mission that our players are doing in this campaign is, if we pull up the region map, so this is the region that we're using, right? This is just that one hex that this campaign takes place. It's about a 10 level campaign, take players from levels 1 to 10. And so basically what they're doing is, like, the living world as it is, like I say, places are trying to sort of recover from this unhinging. So there's a city up here and then a city further down here, right? Like, much further, not just barely off the map, but much, much further. But basically what it is as things are calming down and people are sort of getting, learning better how to survive in this world, both of the cities are kind of like, hey, what if we try to create a secondary trade route that runs directly from here to here, from Fosvik to Mofafetting down here, rather than having to go around here. It would save weeks, months off of trade between these two cities, and then therefore between, Fosvik and everywhere else in the world, right? It would be a great thing. So they're trying to do that, and our players are part of that. What happens is, it turns out that in all of this time, actually, I'm going to bring us back to here. This Golden Wind Plains has become the domain of a large dragon. And the dragon's all like, oh, no, y'all ain't making a highway through my place. Like, this is my turf. And the dragon's not super thrilled about it. So the dragon comes down, says, oi, stop this nonsense. You're not doing this. And the people are like, oh, please. And so the dragon cuts a deal and says, okay, there's this Hall of Wisdom that I've been wanting to get into, but it's magically sealed. It needs 4 keys that are hidden. I don't know where they are. If you can find the keys for this Hall of Wisdom that I want to get into, then you can go ahead and make your little road, and that's fine, right? So they cut a deal. So basically what it is there's stuff happening in this world, and this world exists, and it's and our players just exist in it, and they can go interact and try to find the things that they're looking for, because those keys, they exist, they exist there, and they've been in that same hiding place. And the idea is that if our players didn't interact, eventually the dragon would just, like, probably find the keys on its own and go about it. But our players intervene, and so they have the chance to explore all these areas that are just existing areas that happen to have the things that they're wanting to find, right? So it's not a story built around characters, it's rather characters entering a world that's already been built. So yeah, so I use lore as written in D&D and fantasy in general as it serves, but I'm very willing to play fast and loose with a lot of it. But the difference between chromatic and metallic dragons is definitely something that I tend to stick to as it is, because I like the idea of there being sort of like factions of dragons that are good and bad, right? So the one running this one is running this area is, I feel like I kind of play a little fast and loose with, like, specifically which, like, gold versus brass dragon or something like that. It's like, it's a chromatic dragon. They're better people than, it's a metallic dragon. They're better than the chromatic ones, generally speaking, on the alignment scale. Call it good there. As far as, like, the specifics about these dragons are really obsessed with this type of treasure. It's like, dragon that likes treasure. I don't know. And so, like, this dragon is skinned as a golden dragon. It looks gold to match the Golden Wind Plains and all that kind of stuff. And this dragon actually is very interested in just keeping, yeah, no, 100%. I know exactly what you mean. And so I don't know. All I'm saying is I don't necessarily use the dragons exactly as they're written. But yeah, so like this particular dragon, it wants to protect the plains. It really values the natural order of these plains. And that's why it's upset about, the humanoids coming in and making their roads and stuff, because he's all like, hey, I know what you people do. You do things like war and using up resources, and I don't want you doing that to my plains. And so he really wants to protect the balance, and because of that, he's really interested in wisdom and knowledge and history, and that's why he wants to get access to this Hall of Wisdom, because he thinks that there's something in there that'll be valuable to him. You know, so that's who this dragon is. So it doesn't like necessarily fit an archetype of, you know, golden dragon or whatever as it's written in the lore, but you know, it's my homebrew world. I can do what I want. So okay, so I do have access to Fizzbands. I've purchased the digital copy through D&D Beyond, but I have not taken a detailed read through it yet. I have not had time for that. I am presently in my life preparing for a kickboxing fight in less than 2 weeks now. So it has been it's been on the back burner to read that book, but it's definitely something that will be on the great. I have free time again once the fight's over. And I really intend to, because I like, as soon as I like knew that Fizzbands was coming out, I was like, oh, well, yeah, dragons, that's great. Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I guess the best way to describe how I approach like using D&D rule sets and D&D lore is I use it for inspiration the same way as I would any other, you know, fantasy movie or book or whatever. Like, I don't use them as hard set rules. I use them as like, oh, that's a cool idea. You know, I use the mechanics as rules for the sake of running a game. But when it comes to the world building stuff, I am quite comfortable saying, I don't like that. Screw that. And doing my own thing and just like flying in the face of it. You know, that's just my style. You know, everyone's got different approaches to it. But yeah, it'll definitely be worth reading. Mortal enemy of a lich. After centuries fighting each other, they accepted each other. The buddy's not. Yeah, so like stuff like that is exactly what I mean when I say like it's really cool and I'll use it as inspiration and I may do it. You know, I may use it or I may never use it. You know, I don't know. It depends on if it serves what I'm trying to create in my world. But that is a cool idea. I do like the idea of them finally just having like a begrudging truce. And just being like, fine, I'll stop fighting you if you stop fighting me. I do like that idea. But that's the world. And the city that we're working on specifically is this city right here, the city of Minadala. And the basic history of it is, given its location, so like within this area, there were a whole lot of different like cultures and stuff. We've got dwarves that live under the mountains, giants that live on top of the mountains, elves that live in this forest here. We've got Leonin tribes that kind of dot around the Goldenwind Plains. Lots of humans all over the place. So there's just tons of different cultures and everything. And Minadala just kind of turned into this cultural melting pot of a city that ended up being really popular by tourists who wanted to go and see all kinds of, you know, snapshots of different, like, you know, dwarven and elven and Leonin cultures and stuff like that. And it's like in a nice area, you know, the mountains kind of offer a little bit of shade and respite from like the harsh sun that you might find in the Goldenwind Plains out there, but it's generally speaking a pretty just chill, warm climate all the time. So it's like this really popular, or was a really popular tourist city. Now it's an abandoned city and our players are exploring it while it's abandoned. But that's kind of the city that we're working on here. And it's going to be a really big part of the campaign, and that's why I want to have a better understanding of the history and write up like a timeline is what we're going to work on. So Golden Dragon is friends with the Dragon Turtle, meet every few centuries to play chess. Like, that's good. That's good stuff. Like, those are ideas that I really like. You know, like I say, I like using those as inspiration. You know, I don't know if I would have a place to put that in my game as it is, but, you know, just like ideas like that. Because, like, the way I would use an idea like that is I'd be like, oh, that's kind of an interesting concept to, you know, otherworldly creatures meeting up to have, you know, a game of God chess or something like that. And I might ditch out on saying like, okay, well, it doesn't really serve my game to have it be a dragon and a turtle, right? And instead it would be this, that, or the other thing, right? But like the general idea is really cool. And that's why I love reading through the D&D books, even though I don't really use a whole lot of the lore necessarily as it is. But I do like that idea too. Those are good ideas. I'll definitely have to give that book a read, no doubt. But yeah, for this city, I want to work on the timeline. Because like I say, there's like 2,000 years worth of decline that happens to this city over time. And when my players are exploring, I want them to be able to sort of gain an understanding of this, because that's going to help them understand the wizard that is still alive in the city, that's been using magic to keep himself alive, right? Because the reason that he's keeping himself alive is because he promised to keep this city safe, and he's kind of lost his sanity, and he's kind of this tragic character where it's like there's a part of him really deep down that understands that the people that he was trying to keep the city alive for, that he was keeping the city together for, are not coming back. Like, there's a part of him that recognizes that that's just not going to happen, right? It's been thousands of years. They're not coming back. But there's this sort of part of him that, like, realizes, that realizes, you know, if I don't have this purpose, then what am I alive for? Everyone that I knew and loved is gone, and I'm just here protecting a city that no one is coming back to. So it's like, what am I doing here? And so, like, he's kind of had this mental break where he just sort of lives in denial of the fact that he knows they're not coming back. And so I want to understand this city's timeline and what he's done with this city. So that way, as our players are kind of exploring the city, they can see some of the stuff that he's done and some of the clues left behind, so they can understand what's happened over the years. And if they want to be attentive and investigative about it, they can start to sort of see, oh, this is what happened to this guy. I wonder if, you know, and then if they want to help the wizard or something like that, then they have some resources to understand. But, like, I don't want that to feel like it's the main quest, because it's not. Their main quest is they need that wizard to create a teleportation circle for them to go to where the next key to that hall is, right? Like, that's what they're doing. That's what their purpose is. And so, you know, like, the idea of the side quest in this one is just that it's like there's a setup or interaction if they want to pursue it. Or if they don't, they can just kind of ignore it and go on. So, how's the city in its glory? Yes, absolutely. You're 100% right, and that's what we worked on the first hour of the stream. That's what we worked on the first hour of the stream. You were 100% correct. That is absolutely what we did. And so we spent some time, and we know kind of what the city looked like while it was alive and thriving. And now it's time to figure out exactly how that stuff changed. And particularly the harder part to figure out is what exactly our wizard did at any given time to, like, sort of protect it. And basically what I just kind of want to do is maybe create a snapshot of events that there might be some clues, like some specific events that would be really important to sort of this loss of sanity in our wizard. And so I think one thing that would be really important is immediately after the unhinging, the wizard began fortifying the city with as many protective spells as he could create. Some let's see here. I'm trying to figure out how I exactly want to structure it. Every 500 or so years, some event happens. Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I'll come up with it. I'll get there. I don't know that I want to necessarily prescribe a certain amount of time. That feels a little too by design, and I really want it to just feel like life went on in this new way and shit happened. So I don't know that I necessarily want it to just be like there's landmarks in terms of number of years. I don't even want the timeline to be this many years ago this happened. I want the timeline to just be a conceptual, you know, this thing happened at some point. Like, this was one of the earlier things. And then this thing happened, and this was one of the earlier, and this is one of the mid things happened. And then this thing happened and all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't want to focus on the years. I kind of want to just focus on what he did and how that impacted him, right? And there's a timeline to it in the sense that as different things happen, it compounds his distress until eventually there's a mental break, right? But because I know at some point in time there's a mental break, and he goes from, like, it kind of stops being about needing to protect everything, and more so about following a program that he's set in place that's like, it's less about protecting the city and more about a ritual that he does to just sort of cope with being alive. So the dimension starting to rip and tear. That's not how the unhinging happened. The unhinging was immediate. It just like a snap of the fingers. It just happened. So I don't know that would really do much for us. I think actually, you know, although that does give me an idea though, the first event would be, the first event of a magically altered creature entering the city occurs. Wow. Occurs. There it is. I got there. I've been writing for a little while. My brain's turning into mush. Paranoia wizards. No, it's not paranoia. It's not paranoia. It's he loves his city. Like, he grew up in this city. He loved it. And he wants to protect it. He volunteered to stay behind when everyone left so that he could protect the city so they would have a place to come back to. And so the general break in psychology is him not being able to cope with the fact that eventually a time comes when he realizes the only reason he's still alive is because he's magically keeping himself alive to protect the city, but that no one else would still be alive and no one's coming back. So that's what his thing is. Wizard spell list. I mean, I could. That's not where my focus is right now. My focus is story right now. My focus isn't mechanics. My focus is story right now. So what I want to say here is, like, the first event of a magically altered creature entering the city occurs. I don't even care what the creature is, honestly. Creature entering the city occurs. The wizard goes by the name Sis. His full name is like Zoltirasis or something like that. So he goes by Sis. So Sis helps eliminate the threat, but not before much of the city outskirt, or much, we'll say, but not before multiple city blocks were destroyed and many people were killed. So let's see here. Many people were killed. When we'll say Sis spends time investigating the source of this and soon realizes the flow of magic and the balance between planes is or has been disrupted. He does not yet understand. He does not yet know the full extent of this. And then it'll be the second and third events of magically altered creatures. Let's see, the second and third events of magically altered creatures entering the city happen in quick succession. People begin to fear that this will continue to be a recurring thing. Before I turn crazy. Yeah. He was we have a full history for him. Right here. This is his background and history. Yeah, so we've definitely given him a full history about stuff. He was a kid born to a family of shopkeepers. Always thought he would grow up to be, take over the family business. Showed signs of being talented in magic. A wealthy wizard was visiting the touristy town, noticed that he had talent, offered to fund him through schooling. Kid became a very, not very, but he became a successful and accomplished wizard. but stayed home, and just he loved his family, wanted to stay there, used his powers to open up his own shop, and sort of and work in conjunction with his parents in their shop, and just kind of made a life there. And just as his powers grew, he kind of he wanted to stay there, and he wanted to help the city stay alive. And so when everyone else, and we'll add it to our timeline here, when everyone else wanted to depart because they were too afraid, he volunteered to stay and try to protect the city, so that when everything did calm down, they could have a home to come back to. Is sort of what it was. He definitely, so basically what he does after the unhinging, and this is going to be a lot of the timeline and a lot of the stuff that our players are going to slowly learn about this guy as they're exploring, is he continued to study, and he started to gain because all he had to do 24/7 was basically study what happened and figure out how to protect the city from it and all that kind of stuff. He gained a very strong knowledge of sort of what the nature of the unhinging was, and sort of how magic was interplayed with all of that. And so he found that there was one of the tears in reality deep underground underneath the city, and that's part of like why his tower is as like he's very protective about what floors visitors can visit in his tower. When the players come, they'll find him in his little tower over there, and he'll basically just say like, yeah, no, come into this floor, and there's no staircases. He's basically just like, yeah, this is the guest floor, I'll see you out. And then like he'll just like magically help them get in and out of the tower, because deep underground there is one of the tears, and he found a way to harness the magical radiation, as I call it, to basically keep himself alive. He's tethered to the tower because of that. He can't leave the tower, but he's basically immortal as long as he's harvesting the energy from that. And that's part of kind of what caused the mental break too, is just being alive that long, and just the nature of having such powerful magic coursing through him all the time. So that's like part of it. That's a big part of his history, and that's part of like what I want players to slowly eventually be able to learn. And that's why I want to understand the timeline of the city, because our players are going to be learning a lot of this secondhand through their exploration of the city, right? And so that's what's happening, because they're not actually doing a whole lot of direct interaction with the wizard. They need his help, but he basically keeps sending them on errands, and they have to go out and retrieve stuff for him so that he can do what they need him to do. And so that's kind of where all of this is coming from. So the second and third events, magically altered creatures entering the city, happen in quick succession. People begin to fear that this will continue to be a recurring thing. The fourth event of a magically altered creature entering the city occurs. It is decided that the city must be evacuated for someplace safer. We'll say sanctuary in the city of Fosvik to the north is secured for the people, and the city departs for well, I'll just say, and the citizens depart. Boom, there we go. Hey, I totally understand. I appreciate you stopping by, and I appreciate you sharing ideas. Like, whether I use them or not, I love hearing other people's ideas. They're super awesome, and I love having creative people. So thank you for joining. I appreciate you. I appreciate you stopping by, and I thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me. But yeah, okay, so sanctuary in the city of Fosvik to the north is secured for the people, and the citizens depart. We'll say Sis stays behind, offering to use his powers to try and guard the city for their return. We'll say initial protective spells are put in place, but swiftly rendered useless. Well, I don't. How do I want to say this? But swiftly overcome by the creatures. This begins understanding the enormity of this event. Sis continues to study protective magics to better guard the city, while also studying the nature of the unhinging. Over time, let's see, and actually what I want to do, evidence throughout the city of more powerful spells being placed and broken can be seen, as well as evidence of research into protective magics, as well as study of interplanar interactions. Actions can be found in various places throughout the city. So it's like that's the plant for players to start to understand what he's been doing for all this time. So we'll say, so what we can say here is, Sis discovers the tear beneath the city, and now understands that the unhinging, well, what we'll say is, and now understands that the world may never return as it was before. And like that's the idea, is like the unhinging happens and things will heal, but like there's going to be scars, and like that's kind of when he understands that. This begins studying ways to close tears as studying, fingers are moving too fast, or my brain's moving too fast and my fingers can't keep up. Ways to close tears, as well as to harness the energy of them. Evidence throughout city. Sis begins experimenting with ways to alter phylactery. He basically turns. Is that how you spell phylactery? No, I don't know how to spell phylactery. There it is. He basically learns how to like alter, because like the way magic works in my world is it's not like the spells that exist are the only spells that exist. Magic is a flowing energy, and when you cast a spell or utilize magic, essentially what you're doing is like asking the flow of magic to alter reality for you. And so the idea is that there are known recipes. It's almost like cooking in a way, where it's like there are known recipes, and those are spells that exist, but you can also get experimental. You can try different, like, you know, just like with cooking, how you can try different ingredients and cook times and stuff. With magic, you can try to you know, request different special things. And so he starts to study magics of immortality in a way, so that he can try and harness this energy of this tear to keep himself alive, to continue to protect, because of how long this is going on. So we'll say Sis begins experimenting with ways to alter phylactery magic so that he may harness the energy of the tear to keep himself alive. Is worried that time is passing and that he will die before he can it is safe enough for people to return. We'll say part of him begins to think they may never come back. This is the first step in his mental decline, right? So he starts to recognize that idea. So we'll say Sis successfully harnesses the energy of the tear, but the cost we'll say, but one among many costs is that he is now tied to this tear, or else he will die. So yeah, he'll die. Has to limit what parts of the city he'll protect due to distance from the tear. And the other thing too is has further slipped into denial about whether or not people will return. Right, so we kind of do that. And then what I'm going to say here is the next event is kind of radiation from the energy used to keep himself alive begins to damage his mind and memory. And so at this point, Sis loses track of passing time. So he loses track of passing time. I feel like there's got to be at least like something else that kind of accompanies that, right? There's too much happening here for him to... Radiation from the energy used to keep himself alive begins to damage his mind and memory. This loses track of passing time, as well as his ability to remember important events that happen. Is what we'll say. And so we'll say, Sis, we'll say, and then for just the last one, we'll say, eventually, Sis loses mental fortitude needed to understand truly what he is doing and why he is doing it. He only remembers that he has to protect the city for his people and his daily routine of doing so. And we're going to just say uncounted, because like it's not countless. I mean, there's a specific amount of time, but we're just going to say uncounted years pass, and that's just it. So like that's the kind of timeline that I wanted there to describe. So it's more a timeline of Sis, right? But it's like it's still relevant to the city. And these are the types of stuff that I want to utilize when I'm dropping hints and lore clues for our players about what they're seeing as they're exploring the city. And the reason it's specific to Sis is because the history of the city kind of becomes the history of this wizard, because he's the only sentient being in this city, right? So that's just kind of what happens. And then it serves the game well enough because now we have an understanding, more of an understanding of this dude, and why he is the way he is. And it gives our, like I say, it gives our players the opportunity to interact and help if they want to, right? It gives them information that they could use for all of that. So yeah, I'm content with that. This may need more. This may need editing and it may need more to it, but for right now, I'm really content with this, and I feel really good. I feel much better about this city. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the city, where it was, and what's happened to it over the years. I actually do feel like I have a much better understanding of it for when we continue writing the campaign. So yeah, and that's like perfect timing because we're right about at the time when I'm going to take a bit of a break here. So let me just bring us over to our chatting thing. Whoosh. Well, thank you so much to everyone who stopped by. I appreciate you guys being here. I'm not done streaming for the day. I'm gonna take a short break. But when I come back, we're gonna rest the creative brain here, and we're gonna just play some video games. Today we're continuing my my nostalgic run through of all the Halo campaigns. So we're working on Halo 3. So that's what's gonna happen when I come back from the break. So if you wanna just hang out and watch me shoot aliens, then by all means do that. If not, if that's not your jam, that's totally cool. That's totally cool. I understand it's a bit of a pivot from D&D writing. But if you want to see more of my D&D writing, there's sort of two options to you, for you. One is you can go check out my YouTube channel, EnviroBoy on YouTube. You can find all of my VODs there. So if you want to see some other stuff that I've written, whether it's to give you ideas, whether it's because you just like the background noise, whatever, that's there. That's an available resource for you. I put all my VODs up there. So go check that out. If you want to know the next time I'll be live, my usual schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. 11:30 a.m. Eastern time zone is when we start our writing. Go for a couple hours. 1:30 p.m. Eastern time zone is when we switch over, and that's when I start doing some gaming. So that's my schedule. As of this week, I should be back on Thursday. So if you want to come back and see more stuff, see what we work on next, then stop by next Thursday. If you want other ways to stay connected, I've got a Discord server. It's fun talking about homebrew stuff and D&D stuff there. I also put announcements about my stream and all that kind of stuff there. So Discord's a really good place to stay connected. I have a Twitter, EnviroStreams. You can follow me there for random stupid thoughts and pictures of my cat and and announcements about stream and all that kind of stuff. If you can follow me on Instagram too, EnviroBoy Streams. That's where I've mentioned that I have a fight coming up. I do a lot of like little training videos of me doing my kickboxing and stuff like that, So if you're curious about that, you want to see, what I get up to when I'm not on stream, you can check me out on Instagram. It's a really good place. But yeah, those are all the places you can find me. So with that, like I say, thank you so much to everyone who stopped by. Good conversation today. A lot of good ideas coming from people. I appreciate each and every one of you. It means a lot that you guys stopped by. I'm going to take a break. I'll be back, maybe about 15 minutes. I'll leave you here with some music for now. There will be a bit of a hiccup and the screen will change as I switch over for the sake of the VODs and switch over to our Halo setup there. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Glad you stopped by. And I will see you soon. So sit tight, and I'll catch you cats on the flip side.